Well, I thank you for allowing me to share with you because especially that last little bit said being able to share this burden and this ministry and this opportunity together, because it certainly does reflect what your church has done over 38 years. This is my third time being here. I've been at Wheeler 5 years, and it's third time being here, and it's always a joy to come back and tell people who have been generational givers that this church, I mean, this church has been given since 1988, so 38 years. And I know there's a lot of you that weren't even born at that time. And so it's not just one person seemed to like Wheeler, and while they were at this church that you supported it, but it is because that there has been generations of you in the past and hopefully in the future that will continue to see the need for this type of ministry to help people get off of their feet and to really help them reclaim the hope that they thought was forever lost. The fact that, and it can't be understated, and when I talk about the $38,000 or 38 years and $37,000 that you've given over that amount of time, incredible commitment, but it doesn't end there. Certainly your prayers that come along with that. You guys have provided us some Bibles for our addiction recovery men that are given as gifts to our addiction recovery men as they graduate from their programs. You've given us several different times. You have given us some clothing and things like that. So it doesn't just stop, but it's easy to say because it's so easy to just throw a number out to you. But I don't want that number to just be the only thing. It's not just that we look at your church and say, hey, that's how much we can always expect from them. The fact is that we know that we are walking alongside these people, and you are walking alongside with us. So that means a great deal. As I had said before, I have been here 5 years at Wheeler Mission. And that was after a 39-year career at Eli Lilly. And when you're there at somewhere that long, you kind of think you'll always be identified as that. And yet my role of head of community engagement at Wheeler Mission, it's amazing that in a very short amount of time that I ended up feeling like, well, this is where I was always supposed to be. Now, I don't know if that means I was a slow learner and it took God that long to kind of say, hey, there's where you're supposed to be if you'd have just listened. I'm not discounting that as a fact anyway, but the fact that I'm here now and it is a job that I feel that I've been blessed with, and because of that, this is a joy for me to be able to tell you that lives are being changed by what you have done. And make no mistake, you may not have known any of the lives that you've changed over the last 38 years, but just as surely, if you've pulled somebody out of a house fire and saved their life, or pulled somebody out of that it's drowning, just as surely as you've done that for people that have went through Wheeler Mission. And that can't be undersold by any stretch of the imagination. And just simply, and there we're talking about life and death situations. And that is true, absolutely true, because we deal with, at Wheeler Mission, we deal with a portion of the population. Our guests come to us, and they have nothing. They're experiencing homelessness, but everything they look at in their life tells them you're not worth it. They've lost their home. They've been ostracized from their family. They have no insurance. They don't know where, it's 11 o'clock now. At 11:30, they have no idea where their next meal is going to be. That's what they're worrying about. In this heat, they're worrying about the heat. In the cold, they're worrying about the cold. And their circumstances are telling them constantly, day after day after day, minute by minute, you really just don't matter. You and I know I'm saying this in a very positive way, but all of us in this room probably go through every day with some sort of compliment given to us that it becomes so routine that we either expect it or it becomes white noise to us. That, oh yeah, he thanked me for opening the door. Oh, he thanked me for cleaning the carpets. Oh, he thanked me for the meal I brought over to the sick in-laws, or all these different things. And those are all valid and great things. But we can get those so much that it almost like, oh yeah, that's right, he did tell me thank you, didn't he? And we don't even realize it. It becomes white noise. But to our guests, just simply eye contact, just simply a hello, much less feeding them or giving them clothes, just letting them know that you matter. You have some worth. And even though I've never met you before, as I sit down around the kitchen table with you, or I serve you a meal, yeah, the meal is what is important in that moment. It does provide a need of theirs. But if it's just a meal or it's a sack lunch and it's gone in a couple of minutes, how much long lasting does that give them? But if they're sitting there with a meal, or if I hand somebody a sack lunch and I tell them, hey, man, we're praying for you. I give them eye contact. I listen to what they say. Just those little things. You don't have to be a master's of psychology or a PhD in sociology to be able to just be kind to someone and show respect to someone. And for us, I'm sorry to say, a lot of times it does become white noise, but for them, it is absolutely gold. I've been into some of our shelters sometimes, actually there for a meeting with someone else. And I happen to sit down in the kitchen, and I'll sit down with somebody, and I'm not giving them words of wisdom. I'm not quoting just incredible scriptures so that their life can be turned around as soon as I leave. I'm just simply giving them the time, giving them that what you say to me, man, that's important. That's important to me. And I'm telling you, I cannot tell you the number of times where I have left after 5 minutes and I'm kind of like, did I even say anything? And their body language is totally different. They're sitting up straighter. Their eyes have a little sparkle in them. And it's only because I showed them the respect. And so that is the type of guest that we have. And I'll mention a little bit later, as our film, our little clip did about hope, about help, hope, and healing. I'll share in that a little bit. But that is what is so incredible for me, to be able to see lives that are transformed, people who come in our doors with no hope whatsoever, and they leave thinking, I can do this. God has equipped me to be able to do this. You know, one of the things that I find so incredible is that at this point, Wheeler Mission has about 220 full-time employees, and we are getting very, very close to having 40%, get this, 40% of our full-time staff are former guests. And we're talking about people and leadership of people of influence. My boss is the chief marketing officer. About 15, 16 years ago, he had about drank himself to death. He was in Cincinnati. His mom and dad didn't know what else to do with him. And they heard about a place that was near the IU campus, which is where our addiction recovery is for our men. They took him there. He got his life together and had a lot of great skills. And he's moved up, and he's now our chief marketing officer. We have about 5 directors. We have several managers. And you talk about the impact that makes on our guests as they walk through our day rooms, and our guests can see one of the leaders of Wheeler Mission and say, man, he was in my seat. She went through exactly what I did. And by the same token, our leadership, you know, I'm a great storyteller. I can say, but I never walked those shoes. And when I walk inside I see these men and women that really just need the love of Christ and just letting people know that they are important. I know that here, but I can't feel the same thing like my boss does when he walks through and says, I was there. I was there. He can look at them and interact with them in a level so much deeper with me because he was there. And so I say all that to tell you, I never want Wheeler Mission to become just a ledger in your financial books, because your your impact over 38 years, almost 4 decades, has been so enormous that there are people walking the streets of Indianapolis, central Indiana, all over the country for that matter, that whose lives have been redeemed and whose eternity has been secured because what you have done right here in this room, and that can't be understated. So I could go on and thanking you about that, but I just want you to know each and every one of you have changed somebody's life. Not just the life they live here on the earth, but in many, many cases, you've changed their eternal destination, and I thank you for that. One of the things that I will mention, and it's something that we have to say at Wheeler Mission, it's something we have to say is we've been around 133 years. Since 1893, you can do the math. I'm not going to hold you to it, though. We've been around there. We're the largest and oldest in central Indiana, and by most accounts, Indianapolis is the largest city in the United States. The Indianapolis area is the largest area in the United States that does not have a government-funded shelter. So we've always kind of been the front door of homelessness in central Indiana because, number one, we've just been at it a long time, and quite honestly, the government works with us very well because they know, look, we couldn't do it that well anyway, and we're not having to budget $23 million a year, find extra $23 million a year. But that's just in jest, really, because we work really well with them because they know, look, we really couldn't do it better than what you guys already do it. But so those numbers, the numbers as there's about 1,800 people experiencing homelessness in the Indianapolis area every night, 1,800. And that counts about 180 of those are kids under 18 years old. About half of those come into a Wheeler Mission facility. We have like 6 different facilities here in Indianapolis and in Bloomington. And you go, well, now others will go to places like Salvation Army, Horizon House. There's a lot of other places, but a lot of them maybe are just day rooms. They don't have anything for them in the evenings and things like that. So that's one reason that Wheeler, draws so many of them in because of their 24/7, 365, 3 meals a day, beds, all those different things that they need. But, I say that, and the first thing I say as I'm talking about these bigger numbers is I don't know if this passed you a little bit, but if there's 1,800 a night in Indianapolis and only half comes to Wheeler, and some go to some other places, but there's still a great majority. There's still a great majority that don't come in and have the opportunity to. And, as I talk about the sadness of their situation and how their circumstances tell them you don't belong, you don't matter, you're just, you could die today and it would be a blip on nobody's radar. But as I leap from there, one of the saddest things that I know that happens, a great majority of those that don't come into, especially one of the faith-based homeless shelters, they don't come in because they don't believe they feel like they deserve to come in. Because they'll tell you, I know who I am. I know the baggage I bring. You have no idea what a lousy person I am. I am existing in an area of which I deserve. And if I come to a Wheeler Mission, you're going to love on me, and you're trying to love on somebody that I know myself is unlovable. That, to me, that is one of the saddest comments of why people don't come in to any shelter, much less Wheeler Mission, because they feel like you'll take care of me, and if you knew who I was. Of course, their circumstances is all they have to tell them what they were. I'm on the street, no job, no food, no money, no anything. Their circumstances has convinced them you don't matter. So why would you go to some place that tries to love on the unlovable? And isn't that incredibly sad that 1,800 people a night in Indianapolis, and close to half of those have some of those thoughts in their minds that I don't want to come in. So there are times when somebody comes in our door for the first time, that in of itself is an incredible victory because they've let down their guard enough to say, I just need to sleep somewhere safe tonight. I'm gonna go in spite of who I know I am. And then they get into our buildings, and then that is the time that we can begin to love on them and treat them like not just a number, but a Joe and a Jane and a Sam and a Margaret, and all that. They actually have names and they have a purpose. The big numbers: 410,000 meals last year, 250,000 nights of shelter. We had, and this is in 2025. We had almost 14,000 what we call distinct guests, and that means 14,000 first-time guests. So they're not only just either maybe new to Wheeler, but they're new to being homelessness. So they have no idea what is in store for them and what is in front of them. And all those numbers mean something, but I say this in many times. If I'm doing a sack lunch, and I have that number that there's 1,800 a night in Indianapolis, and I'm handing one sack lunch to one person, you can get paralyzed by that thought and go, am I making any difference at all? I'm giving one sack of lunch, some chips and a sandwich and a drink to one person. I'm not saving 1,800. Why am I even trying to do this? Well, we try to tell people it's not about the 1,800. It's about the one. It's about the one that you've chosen on that day. I'm interacting with that one today, regardless of whether or not you ever meet him or not, the resources you've put into this to be able to interact with that person and allow somebody from Wheeler to interact with that person. And here's the reality of it all. That one sack lunch, you're not going to change their yesterdays. You may or may not change their tomorrows, but you know what you're doing? You're putting a stake in the ground to say, I'm changing their todays. I'm changing theirs today. And if you do that one day, and you do that the next day, and you do that the next day, all of a sudden, they're being given stuff by people that they know that they'll never meet. But all of a sudden, it doesn't come just a standalone free meal. It begins to let them see, wait a minute, there's a trajectory of my thought. They're loving on me. I'm getting these meals from people I'll never meet, and they care for me. And all of a sudden, we begin to change their mindset about their worthiness to even be alive. And that's the key thing for us. It's not somebody comes in one day and we just bombard them with scripture and great case management and case workers, and all of a sudden the next day they're like, okay, I'm ready to go out here and get me a $200,000 job. That's not happening. But what we do is we just give them that. All we need them to do is to go from I am worthless and everything in my life tells me so, to saying, and this is all we need them to do, maybe there is a chance. That's all we need to get them to do, is just to consider that maybe my life is worth something. And that's what you guys have been doing for 38 years, is helping us get people from I don't matter to maybe I do. Maybe I do. And then once we get there, then all of a sudden there's some clay that we can work with and begin to mold them and to just let them say, look, if you think we care about you, what about the one who created you? He has not left you. He is still on the throne. And your circumstances may not change a lot immediately, but their outlook on what those circumstances are, then all of a sudden they become just the clothes they're wearing and not what they are inside as a person. Let me, and to drive this home, there's always some scriptures I absolutely love. If you have your Bible or Bible app, I'm just going to read something real quickly here from Mark 5, the first 5 verses. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. Now, a lot of times in Scripture, we really love the miraculous things, and you guys know this Scripture probably pretty well about the healing that will go on with this man with multiple demons. But sometimes it is we miss so much we appreciate the miracle, but we forget sometimes the stuff that went around after it, and the lessons learned by many people, not just this one healed person. But if you remember that just at the end of Mark, Jesus had been preaching in Capernaum, and they were all tired. The apostles and Jesus himself was all tired. And they were kind of retreating from that evening, and he said, hey, let's, as that first thing, they came to the other side of the sea. He said, hey, let's go to the other side of the sea. And they were like, okay, fine, which in and of itself was a little different, because going to this spot that they were going from Capernaum to the Gerasenes, that was the first time that Jesus had intentionally went to a fully Gentile place. Those apostles were very well aware of that. Now, you can also say, well, how about the Samaritan women? Well, that doesn't really count as much, because the Samaritans, as you know, were kind of half-breeds, so they weren't really totally Gentile as it's such. Now, they were hated as much as the Gentiles, but just by their DNA, they were a little different. But this is the first time that there was a deliberate crossing and approaching a totally 100% Gentile area. So that in and of itself kind of raised the eyebrows of the apostles. And then if you know the story then, that as they finish in Capernaum and go to the other side, they encounter a storm. And of course, they've already seen Jesus do a lot of remarkable things. And they're in the boat, and they encounter a storm. And the Sea of Galilee is known for just absolutely going from tranquility to chaos in moments, just because of the way the mountains come over the sea and things like that. And they encountered this storm, and I want you to understand, this is not just any storm, because many of the apostles that were in the boat, they were lifetime fishermen. They were professional fishermen. They'd seen every storm come and go. But when they were afraid, saying, oh my gosh, do you not care, Jesus? Wake up. We are going to die. We're not talking about some people that just, well, Matthew, the tax collector, I could see him saying that. But these professional fishermen, you were like, oh, man, this must be a bad storm if they had never seen a storm like that and were certain they were going to die. So Jesus calms the storm, okay, on the way over to the Gerasenes. Now we think, well, that's really great, but the apostles really didn't know. They were just simply going from one storm to the other. They got to the other side, and immediately, as Mark is apt to do, if you look into Mark, everything to Mark is immediately. It's like just now, just then, just now. So immediately, as Mark says, he doesn't waste any time in any of his words. Immediately, as they got out of the boat on the other side of the Gerasenes, he was encountered by this multi-demon possessed man that lived in the tombs. He's wailing almost all time, night and day. He's got this supernatural strength because the community tried to tie him up, and he keeps breaking the strings, or breaking the chains. He lives in the tombs, which at that point, the thought was that's where all demons live anyway. And then it brings it into today's thing. And then he was taking stones and cutting himself. I mean, isn't that a familiar thing that our case managers have to deal with middle-aged kids, young people doing the cutting because it's some sort of punishment for them for being who they are. So this man was doing all this. He was placed there by the community. Kind of an outcast of society, such as, for different reasons, but such as the homeless, as the caste system in India. I've been to India several times actually, and even though the caste system and the leprosy issues are unlawful to do now, you can go into a leper colony and you can literally see where the community is put a barrier in between where they can come and they can say, clear out. Clearly, it's unlawful, but it's still practiced. So again, we're talking about someone that's an outcast of society, and he possesses almost everything detestable that you could possibly imagine. He's totally overwhelmed. That the young boy that was born in his mom's arm, he's in there somewhere. But he is so bound up by all the demons, there's nothing he can do at this point. And I think it's curious that Jesus asked him what his name is, and it was Legion. Well, if you want to take this a little bit farther, Legion was a Roman term for a commander that was in command of about 4,000 to 6,000 people. Now, it's just speculation that that's how many demons were in the man, but it is curious that they would name him Legion, and they did know that he had multiple demons in him, because on one of the other Gospels, it actually says, what are you doing here to us? Or he even said, all right, don't throw us out. He used the word we, as if, those demons knew exactly that there was many of us here. And the thing I want you to take away from this, and it certainly all ties into what you help Wheeler Mission do, isn't it interesting that Jesus runs to the very place that everyone else runs from? Jesus runs to the very places that everybody else runs from. When those demons were expelled, this man was in his right mind. And again, I don't want to belittle the miraculous healing, but I want you to see Jesus' intentions here. He comes to a place that he's not really welcome, the Gentile area. He intentionally says, let's go get the boat, we're going over the other side. He comes in, he encounters this demon-possessed man. He heals him, and it's some interaction with the community too, but he heals them. And Jesus gets right back in the boat and goes back to the other side. And Jesus came specifically for him. He came across there for all, there could have been 1,000 reasons, but Jesus gets into a boat after he's tired, goes to the other side, and he goes for the one man. That man was worth it in Jesus' eyes. Like the Samaritan woman. He didn't have to go through Samaria. I mean, all the Jews went around Samaria because they were like dogs, that the scripture says. The Jews thought the Samaritans, but why did he go? He went for that one woman. And what did that woman do? She proclaimed Jesus after her encounter with Jesus, because encountering Jesus changed everything. And it changed her. And what I love about the Samaritan woman, the story, at the very end it says, and many people believed because of her testimony. If you counted out the 4 most detestable things in that culture, she possessed them. She was Samaritan. Not good. She was a woman. Essentially had no rights, maybe a commodity at best. She was immoral, and she was uneducated. You couldn't find 4 more low-life things in that society. And who did Jesus go to? Jesus runs to what everybody else runs from, runs to what everybody else runs from. See, they were the Samaritan woman and Legion. They were Jesus' one more. You and I are his one more. He didn't save all of us because of the group we're in today. He saved you because you're you. You have a uniqueness and a love by Jesus Christ. And he went on to that cross for all, but he went on to it for one. If it was just me, he would have crawled upon that cross and gave that sacrifice for that. So the fact is that we are his one more. And the people that we try to serve and what you guys help us do, we help them come into the shelter with nothing. And worst of all, not just material things, but worst of all, no hope that it will ever change. And you allow us to show these people, these men and women and children that come into Wheeler Mission, hey, you know what? You're our one more. How many do we save? One more. How many do we want to save? That one more. We're not really interested in group saving here. We're interested in that one more, because Jesus Christ created each of us individually, distinctively, and he knows us by name. Referring back to what we that the video talked about, you'll see we're putting a little bit more emphasis at Wheeler Mission on kind of the doors that our guests come through. It is very clear that with the people I talk to, there are individuals, mostly individuals that I will talk to, that have given to Wheeler Mission 4 decades. And when we tell them that we're not just some Depression-era soup kitchen where you come in, you get a sandwich, you get a drink, and you move on out the back door, just as you came in the front, and that's our only interaction. There are still a lot of those people that believe that that's kind of what we do. We're just a food bank. We give them food and we move on. Not that food is not important, but that we just give them the food and move on. And when we tell them, no, we're about life transformation. The food happens to be the first part that we have to address. The shelter, we have to address that right away. But it's the life transformation. It's the insides that we're ultimately interested in. Because we can change the outsides, and you know what? There's a lot of people that are living in a home that are lost. So that's just a location change. Whether or not you're homeless on the street or you have no relationship with Jesus Christ and you're lost in a home, that's just a location change. What we're interested in is the internal transformation. And so what I tell them, and they'll go, I had no idea that you did all those things. And that's one of the things we're trying to kind of tell in a different way now at Wheeler Mission, that we kind of have these 3 doors: the hope, the help, the hope, and the healing. And that help is the help door, as you can imagine, is there are people that come in, they just simply need us to. They just need their basic needs met. Is it food? Is it clothing? Is it some medical attention? Is it all different kinds of? Is it just to come off the street and be safe for a while? That's what and so that part of it I look at that is what Wheeler gives them at that point, that help portion of it. But then what we try to do, and as I mentioned before, we try to love on them so much that it gives them a different paradigm to look at. It gives them a different pair of glasses to look at the world and look at their own life for. And many of them, as they've been loved on for a while, and say, man, I like this, but I don't even know how I got to where I'm at. How do I get to where I want to go? And then we can walk beside them. So the help is more of us giving to them. The hope part is us walking alongside of them, setting some boundaries for them and letting them understand, getting them biblically trained so that they know this is more than just, oh yeah, you have a meal, you have this. It's more of the fact that your biggest problem is understanding where your identity comes from. Does it come from the material things you have or do not have, or does it come from Jesus Christ? And that's where that middle door, that hope door that we can begin to give them, and they can begin to understand, man, my circumstances have been lying to me this whole time. I do have some purpose and some meaning in life. I want to find out what that is. And then at that point, then we can move them to the healing door. And that healing door is where we walk beside them into these aftercare programs, be able to get them job training, to get them all kinds of things that they're going to be able to need to get their credit score better, to get all these different things that we can, and get them associated with a church so that when they leave the walls of Wheeler Mission, they're now not just off in themselves. They've got a mentor at this church or that church that's going to stay with them and help them walk and that journey in their faith. So it really is a very intentional thing that we end up trying to do for them. And again, I loop back to what I said before. All these things we have the opportunity to do doesn't happen if you have not generationally given. We are forever in debt to our community for saying, hey, you know what, this is something that we need to be aware of, and these are some lives that we can change. And what you don't understand, we talk about our guests, and what you do helps us change their lives, both here on earth and eternally. But what you may not see, and many times they don't see it right away. When they get into these situations, they believe, I'm not affecting anybody but me. Nobody else cares. And then they find out as they begin to grow and begin to really start to heal, man, there were so many people that's been praying for me, so many people that I hurt, and all of a sudden families are reborn again, relationships with children and parents. It is really incredible to see that it doesn't just end with the healing of the one guest. It's the healing of the family and the community around that. And so only as God could do. His ways and his thoughts are so much higher than ours. And you invest in us and we invest in the community. But God is doing some stuff behind this. He's doing some stuff right in front of our eyes, which is incredible. But the fact is to know that with total security and hope that he is doing stuff behind the scenes in people's lives right now that we'll never know. It is truly remarkable. And I know every day I am blessed to be able to walk out of Wheeler Mission and say, man, you know what? Somebody's life changed today. Somebody's life took a different turn today. It may not be, he may not get up and be preaching in the next week somewhere, but the fact is their life took a turn today. They are on the path of being able to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and be able to be a productive member of society because of that. When in a place where they were one drink away from killing themselves, they were one snort away from killing themselves with drugs, and yet their life has been redeemed. And that is where God gets so much glory. And I appreciate all of you letting me be here and let you understand that in your commitment to Wheeler Mission, you are uplifting the glory of God to redeem a broken world. And we just thank you for that.